So, you're interested in the One Piece card game and wonder which starter deck you should pick up as a new player? Let's go over each one of them and rank them based on value so you know which deck will benefit you the most.
Card D Kaizoku.
Our tiers will consist of best value. These contain many cards that are essential to many different kinds of decks. Good start. These decks may not have as many usable cards, but the cards they contain are essential to some decks. Meh. These decks are filled with cards that are usually tech choices in popular decks, and their singles are probably cheaper to get separately. And expensive toilet paper, the name speaks for itself. The evaluations of these decks will be based on the OP04 meta, which will be the 4th expansion for the One Piece card game coming out in September. Since we're basing these placements off of value, it's only fair that we take into account cards that we know will come out in OP04. Without further ado, let's start off with starter deck 1, the Straw Hat starter deck. Right, so first off, the leader, Monkey D. Luffy, the leader himself. We do see some people play him in the meta. He's more closer towards the top of competitive leaders than the bottom. I wouldn't say he's top tier at the moment, but he is playable. And his leader ability is pretty simple to grasp. If we move on to Usopp, no one uses this card. Karoo, I think in OP04 there's like an animal style red deck. It's probably not going to be like competitive or too viable, but it's a way to play. But other than that, I don't think he's worth much. I don't think Sanji sees much play anymore. No one plays Jinbei. Chopper is essential for law decks. He's also run in some Strawbeard decks, but yeah, if you're planning on playing law, you probably get a lot of value out of a Straw Hat starter deck with the 4 copies of Chopper. This Nami, I believe law decks run it as a 1 or 2 of copy. Other than that, I don't think any other decks run it at the moment. This Robin's just a vanilla, this Vivi's just a vanilla. Frankie, some Strawbeards run Frankie, but you could just as easily run the promo Luffy. It's just a vanilla Straw Hat card at 4 cost. Brook, I'm pretty sure Brook is essential to Red-Green Law as well. It's also a 2k counter option if you're playing a Straw Hat package in either a Zoro or a Whitebeard deck. So I'd say he's pretty good value as well. This Rush Luffy, Strawbeard runs him now. I think even some Zoros are running a copy or 2, and Law also runs a copy or 2. Yeah, he's a very versatile card. He has Rush and he can ignore blockers. This Zoro, I believe he's only run in Red-Green Law as well. A lot of Red-Green Law cards in this starter deck. Some Law lists don't run him at all, but we're starting to see some people value the 1 Dawn attached, making him a 7k attacker, and then 6k on the opponent's turn value out of this Zoro. Guard Point, Whitebeard runs it, Zoro runs it, Ace runs it. I'd say it's one of the more high value cards in this starter deck. Jet Pistol 2, back in OP02, and especially OP01, everyone ran 4 copies of this card. These days we don't see it run as much, but we do see it pop up every now and then because people don't expect it anymore. So I'd say this is a card that will always retain its value throughout future sets. Just for now, people are not favoring it, but I still think it's a really good card. Diable Jam, I'm pretty sure only Zoro runs this and only has like a 1 or 2 of copy. And then the staged card, no one runs this, so no value there. So overall, I'd say this is one of the better starter decks to pick up, especially if you're thinking of running Red-Green Law. Red-Green Law runs so many cards from the starter deck, so it would help you get a jump start on building that deck if you want to play it. Because of that, I'd have to give Luffy best value. Alright, let's move on to the second starter deck, which is the Worst Generation starter deck. So, the leader card uses Captain Kidd. He is a top tier leader. He has been since OP01. His double swing, or his ability to attack twice in a turn for 3 Dawn and a card discard, is a really strong effect for closing out games or like clearing board. So I do predict that we'll continue to see him in the future, depending on what other future green cards are released. I do believe at the moment in OP04, Doflamingo is the premier green leader, but I feel like Kid always manages to sneak in to the meta eventually, somehow. Like how we saw in OP02, where Kid basically disappeared when Kinemon entered, but then near the end of the meta, a Film Kid variant popped up, and then now that's like way more popular than Kinemon. Let's see, Vito, just a vanilla, nobody runs him. Urogue, nobody runs him. Capone Gang Beach, he's essential in a Law deck. And then pretty much any deck that runs the Supernova package as a supplemental set, you can just chuck them in as a cheap counter or cheap blocker. Pillar, people used to run him against Zoro, but there's much better options to handle Zoro now in green. Kobe's just a vanilla. Bonnie. Bonnie is probably the most high value card in this deck. Omega Essential in Red Green Law. So again, if you're playing Red Green Law, you're probably going to want to pick up both the Straw Hat and the Worst Generation deck. Yeah, it's just a really great Supernova searcher, and then if she survives, you can search again. Not too many other searchers let you do that. And she can search for herself too. What other decks run it? If you're running Film Kid, especially, you'll need her to find 7-cost Luffy's and Zoros. If you're running Kinemon or Odin, they probably run Supernova as a supplemental package, because I don't think there's enough pure Wano support to exist on its own. And Odin runs 8-cost Kid too, which is searchable by Bonnie. So yeah, Bonnie, great card. Scratchman of Pooh is probably just a 2k counter that is searchable by Bonnie. So by virtue of being searchable by Bonnie, he has a lot of great value to be included into decks. We have starter deck Law. Basically only seen in a red-green Law deck. He allows your blocker Laws and your starter deck Zoros to attack twice. They'll net you a lot of value. But outside of red-green Law, no other decks run him. Basil Hawkins, more of a tech pick, but he's useful. He was a lot more useful when 4-cost Marco was prevalent in the meta, because he could attack twice into it. But for now, I think he's still good at trading. I do believe Red Green Law runs him as a 1 or 2F copy. Film Kid runs him when they can't afford a Bartolomeo, Film Bartolomeo, because that card's like crazy expensive now, so this is a good alternative to him. Other than that, I don't think too many other decks require him. Heat's just a vanilla, Beppo's a vanilla, 7-cost Kid. I used to really like this card. I still think it's a really good card, but there's just too many ways to deal with him now that if you waste 7 Dawn to play him and then just get rid of him, then it's kind of a waste. But yeah, I'd have to say from now to OP04, probably not too high value of a card. But in OP01, he was a menace. X-Drake, this Anthem X-Drake, I see some people run like an aggro version of Kid with the Supernovas with him, but I think it's more of a fringe deck. I don't think it's I wouldn't consider him like meta, so I won't put too much value into him. Scalpel and Repel, these are event counters that I don't think I see ran at all. And then Straw Sword, it was good in OP01 and OP02, but right now Paradise Totsuka, which only rests I think 6 costs or lower, or 4 costs or lower, I forgot. But it only costs 1, so it's a lot more flexible to use over Straw Sword. So I don't think many decks run Straw Sword anymore. So with that, there is pretty good value in this deck. Not as much as a Straw Hat deck, but if you're running Red Green Law, as I said, this Bonnie is like pretty essential for that. So maybe that sounds like it would be a good start, right? Essential cards, but not too much value out of the rest of the deck. Alright, moving on to starter deck 3, which is the 7 Warlords of the Sea deck with Crocodile as the leader. Crocodile is not a top tier leader at the moment, but he did get quite a boost in OP03, and he will get even more of a boost in OP04. I'd say he's like a just under meta. Maybe with a little more support in OP05, he could be like top tier, but yeah, he's not oppressive or anything, but he can handle his own. And if you're playing casually at like a locals or something, Crocodile would be a perfect deck to bring when you're not trying to try hard. The rest of the deck, Weevil, just a vanilla. Alright, this blocker Crocodile, nobody runs him. It's kind of trash. Gekomori is great if whether you're playing him in a Crocodile deck or in a Doflamingo deck or even Ivankov. No, probably not Ivankov, but yeah, he He is a really good target to cheat out with Doflamingo's leader ability, as he can get you key cards from your graveyard back into your hand. You can bring back like a blocker law or like a 2k counter, which we'll go over right now. This Mihawk, one of the premier targets for Gecko Moria to bring back from the graveyard. He's a 2k counter, but actually his stat line is not a 2k counter stat line. There are cards that aren't 2k counters that are just as good as Mihawk, or rather Mihawk is just as good as some cards that aren't 2k counters. Yeah, his effect lets you cycle 2 cards in your hand, which is great, and his stat line is worth it for that effect, I feel, for 4. And he can still attack into leaders at 5k. So I'd say he's one of the better 2k counters you can get from a starter deck. This Jinbei is just a vanilla Sentomaru. The Sentomaru is only run in Crocodile, I believe. Yeah, it's a nice card engine to net you some advantage because he both thins out your deck and draws you cards. But outside of Crocodile, I believe in OP04 Crocodile doesn't even run Sentomaru anymore. So if you do want to get value out of him, like probably right now is the only time that you'll be able to use him. Along with these Pacifistas that are also in the deck. But it's nice that the whole engine is already included in the deck for you. This Blocker Law, 1 cost cheap blocker. I've seen some decks run it, some don't, so I think it's more of a tech choice for blue decks. The 7 cost Doflamingo used to be really great, but now with Sogeking, they hit pretty much the same targets, but Sogeking hits for 1 cost less, but Sogeking has counter, so I probably won't value Doflamingo too high anymore. This Kuma, nobody runs him. This Buggy's a vanilla, nobody runs. This Boa Hancock, it's a niche blocker option. I don't think she's essential, she's more of a tech choice, so some value but not too much. This Teach is only run in Doflamingo decks because Doflamingo can cheat him out, and he bottom decks a 3 cost or less, which is good against like Zoro decks. Yeah, I would say also a tech choice. I think not even all Doflamingos run him anymore. So there's that. Sables, I don't think anybody runs this. Thrust Pad Cannon, nobody runs this. And Love Beam, probably one of the better 2 Dawn event counters. It counters for 4k, and then if you're low in cards in hand, you get to draw a card, which is pretty great. Because you can counter for 4k and then draw into like a 2k counter potentially. So even if you only started with just 4k counter in hand, you could actually end up with 6k with this. I believe this is the most expensive card in the deck, and I do believe Doflamingo runs it, Ivankov runs it, Nami runs it. I don't know if Crocodile runs it anymore. But anyway, it's still a great card. I value this card pretty highly. So overall, let's see. If you're playing Doflamingo, this is a great starter deck to pick up. Other than that, if you're playing like Nami or Crocodile or Ivankov, it's probably better just to buy singles from this deck if you need any cards from it. I'm gonna put maybe a good start if you want to play Doflamingo. Otherwise, meh if you don't. We'll look at starter deck 4 now. The Animal Kingdom starter deck, Animal Kingdom Pirates starter deck. The leader, Kaido. OP01 viable, OP02 starting to disappear in viability. And then OP03 onward, I don't think he is able to catch up with the rest of the leaders anymore. So probably 0 value for the leader if you're looking to pick up the deck for the leader. This ulti is a 2k counter that can cheat out a page 1. I don't think people run it anymore. Purple has a lot of like weird 2k counter options that tailor your deck in specific ways, and then this ulti doesn't really fit into any of those playstyles anymore. This 9 cost Kaido, I believe it's run in Magellan decks, and we may see it run in OP04 with the starter deck 10 leaders. But yeah, I'd say it's a pretty high value card. People run this over the 10 cost Kaido even, because he's a big body that has rush and he can also KO something on play. So I'd say yeah, pretty good card. This King, it's run in Magellan decks. Probably any purple deck can run him. He's a big body and he can KO something on play, much like the 9 cost Kaido, but only for 1 Dawn returned. So this is a high value card. This Queen, probably the most value card in the deck. Probably one of the best blockers in the game as well. He's a big blocker. countering for 6k, which is over the normal 5k that leaders have. So you can get kind of a free block if your opponent doesn't devote any Dawn to their attacks. What makes him great is that on play as well, you can draw 2 cards and trash 1. So you can replace your hand with better cards and get rid of a card that you don't need, and you're up 1 card playing him, so he replaces himself. And he has 1k counter to boot on top of that, so he's really amazing card, I feel. This Sasaki, nobody runs him, I don't think. Sheep's Head, nobody runs him. Jack, I think Z decks run him, but Z is nowhere near being a top meta deck anymore. Yeah, this card is just to fix your curve if you're going first, or if you're going odds, as you can ramp to even number Dawn with him, which makes it easier for you to play your 10 cost Kuzan, but yeah, I'd say he's a niche option if you're running Z, which is also a niche leader to begin with, so maybe not too much value out of this card. Jin Rummy is just vanilla, nobody runs. Who's Who, nobody runs anymore. There's better ways to handle small bodies. Black Maria, more of a tech choice. You'll see some purple decks still run it if they need more blockers, but there's other blocker choices in purple as well. Page 1 is a vanilla that's only run with ulti. X-Drake is another vanilla. Lead Performer Disaster. So prior to starter deck 10, I'd say this card nobody ran at all. Probably one of the worst cards. Well, I'll include analysis into OP05 as well, but it looks like ramp may be a prominent playstyle in that meta, with viable leaders that can support ramping decks. Because of that, I would give some value into Lead Performer Disaster. It's a card that lets you draw a card, so it replaces itself, and then it lets you ramp one for 4 Dawn. Pretty expensive, and it really doesn't net you much value, but in a ramp deck, it helps you get to your key cards faster. And it has a trigger that lets you play it for free, so if you happen to trigger it, you get immense value out of it actually. A free card and free Dawn. But that's depending on you getting it in trigger. So unless you can manipulate this on top of your life, I wouldn't depend on it. But yeah, for future speculation, this card may have some more value than we currently think. Brachio Bomber is a removal spell in purple. I don't think people run it. I do see it every now and then and it catches you off guard, but I guess there must be a reason people don't run it because it's not too great of a card. So I wouldn't put too much value on it. Last Breath is a good 4k counter option for 1 Dawn. I don't think Magellan runs it at the moment, but I know Red Purple Luffy has that as an option because he can just ramp back up the Dawn that is used for this. With Red Purple Luffy being a starter deck 10 leader, by the way, so just FYI. Not gonna come out for a while. So potentially some value, but for now, not too much. Then Onigashima, only runnable in Kaido decks. Or, well, in King too. If you do want to play Kaido or King, this card is going to be pretty much essential for you to play, but even though it's essential to play those decks aren't too great anyway, so I don't know if you want to put too much value on that. So the value of this card depends on if you want to be a purple coper, but good luck with that. Because of this, I don't know, King and Queen are really good. Yeah, even though purple overall is not in a great spot right now, the cards in this deck are, can't deny that they're pretty good. So probably also a good start if you want to get started in purple, which is not a good color for now, but it will be in the future, I feel. So if you want to invest in the long haul, you can pick up Kaido and wait until purple is good. Let's go to starter deck 5 now. Starter deck 5, please. So starter deck 5, the leader, the Shanks, is complete trash, nobody plays him, and if you do play him, it's like impossible to win with him. Because his effect revolves around you swarming the board and then minusing 3 Dawn to make your board attack for 2k more power. So kind of like a Zoro effect that is really expensive to use and more dependent on your board than Zoro's would. Because Zoro can just attach it down for free and it's active. So no value in the leader there. We'll look at Ayn. I don't believe Ayn is run by any purple deck, but I am working on a red purple law list that runs Ayn, and she's been pretty good in that deck, but that deck hasn't topped any tournaments, or it's too soon for it to see it play in any tournaments. It's just me playing around with it, so I personally put value into Ayn, but maybe if I have to go like with data points available, I would say no. She doesn't have much value. But if you care about my value on her, I value her decently high. But only because she allows me to play Red Purple Law, which is a deck I like playing right now. But in general, yeah, I'd have to say pretty low value on Ayn. And just a purple blocker, but she doesn't even have plus 1k counter, unlike Black Maria. So probably low value on Anne. This Uta blocker, for now, not much play. You won't see her in too many other purple decks, but once OP04 releases and we get green-purple Doflamingo as a leader, green-purple Doflamingo runs green-purple film cards. We'll definitely see Uta get a lot of play and a lot of value from being in a Doflamingo deck. So if that's a deck that you're excited to play, this would be a good starter deck to pick up. Farina, I don't believe any decks run her. Guild Tesoro, I think he's a great card. Probably one of the other value cards in the deck. In green purple Doflamingo, he helps you draw 2 cards in the late game when you return 2 Dawn when attacking. And he himself has a 6k stat line, so it's pretty easy to attack with him. Yeah, just the amount of card advantage you get out of him in the late game is just pretty crazy, being able to draw 2 cards for a 6k body that you would normally attack with anyway. Discordance Vanilla, nobody runs. The Shiki, I don't believe any purple decks run them, so no value there. The Scarlet is a card with a trigger that isn't run in any deck. This Z also is not run in any deck. Douglas Bullet, I don't believe is run in any deck, but I could be wrong. I don't really keep up with purple too much. There might be some purple decks that run it, but from all the purple decks I face, I've never seen a Bullet come out. This Baccarat is just a vanilla, nobody runs. Bins is a vanilla, nobody runs. Buena Fiesta. So Buena Fiesta, probably one of the highest value cards if you're running film. If you're running a film package in purple. He's not only a searcher, but he's also a 2k counter, so he fills 2 roles. One of the most important cards in a green-purple Doflamingo deck, as he can find your Luffys and he can find your Utas. And yeah, as I said, he's also a 2k counter when you don't need to search, so really versatile card. Dr. Indigo is a vanilla that nobody runs, and I don't even remember what movie he's from. The events, I don't think anyone runs them either, so no value there. So really, only value for a green-purple Doflamingo deck, and potentially red-purple Law if my prediction on Ayn being good for the deck is true. So because of that, maybe I have to say good start, right? Because I established that good start are decks that don't have many usable cards, but they contain cards that are essential to some decks, and these cards are essential to green-purple Doflamingo. Yeah, without green-purple Doflamingo, this is expensive toilet paper tier, because at the moment in OP03, literally no decks run these cards. But with OP04 in mind, yeah, I'd have to put good start. And that's, again, with the caveat that this is for OP04, which won't release for like a month and a half. So keep that in mind if you're investing in Shanks or Kaido, it's for like the long haul. We'll move on to starter deck 6, which is Absolute Justice. Did I say the name of starter deck 5? Starter deck 5 is the film starter deck. Alright, we'll go on to 6. Sakazuki, probably the worst black leader, nobody runs him. His effect is too expensive and too niche, or too like prohibitive. It's hard to get a card to 0 cost in the first place, and on top of that you have to trash a card and pay 3 Dawn. So just a horrible leader in general. This Kobe, nobody plays him. Django, nobody plays him. This Smoker, some Smoker decks still play him, but I think in OP04 there's just a bunch of other black cards. Or even now in OP03 there's a bunch of other better black cards. In OP04 black is filled with the Dressrosa archetype, which is for a Rebecca deck, so probably not as generic for black in general. So I'd say probably low value on the Smoker. Nobody runs this Sengoku. Tashigi is a 2k counter that's still used in black decks today and will be in the future. She's just a really good activator for -2 cost if you need it, but also a 2k counter when you don't need it. To-do blocker, I think nobody runs this blocker anymore. We have Fukuro and Borsellino, which are like the premier blockers in black because they can't be KO'd by KO effects. So nobody runs Tsuru anymore. This Hina, nobody runs anymore either. Full body, nobody runs. Helmet Bow, nobody runs this Helmet Bow. They run the other Helmet Bow. Momonga, nobody runs. This Garp. Garp is still seen in play today and will be in the future for non-Rebecca black decks. He's just a really good removal spell, and he's also a body on board on top of that. T-Bone, nobody runs. Impact Wave, Shockwave, whatever you want to call it. This card currently sees play in Smoker and Lucci decks. Does not see play in Rebecca decks, I don't believe. Yeah, even Rebecca doesn't run Shockwave anymore, so if you want value out of this card, it's only good right now. But yeah, if you're planning to pick up these decks to play right away, this is a good card. Great Eruption, I don't believe any decks run this anymore. Whiteout, no decks run. Marineford, nobody runs. So it's basically just Garp and Tashigi, and I guess Shockwave for now. Because of that, probably put it in the meh tier. You could get by not running Garp, because Sakazuki does the same thing, and then Tsuru does what Tashigi does. Or if you really need these cards, it's better to just buy them as singles. So meh seems right to me. We'll move on to starter deck 7, which is the Big Mom Pirates starter deck. Charlotte Linlin herself, the leader, is used. I believe she's a really good leader, probably near the top of the meta. Her leader ability lets you control top card of your life area when you're down to 3. It's great when you're playing against a Katakuri too, because you have a higher degree of control of your triggers over him. So good value on this leader, actually usable in the meta. Charlotte and Anna is a vanilla, nobody runs. This Katakuri, at first I thought he kind of sucked, but these days people are running him as like a 1 or 2 of copy, or even a 4 of copy in a Linlin deck, since you're incentivized to get to 3 life to control your triggers. Yeah, he's just, if you're lower life than your opponent, he gets rush, and he has a 6k stat line for 4. So he's pretty usable. I'd say decent value. Probably more of a tech pick. Charlotte Snack, nobody runs. Charlotte Daifuku. I do see some yellow players run Daifuku in their deck, both Linlin and Katakuri. But I just don't think he's worth it over the other 4 cost cards in the deck. But since I do keep seeing him pop up every now and then, I'd give him some value. Charlotte Flampe, nobody runs. Charlotte Brule, this is a high value card. I believe Brule's run in Linlin, Katakuri, and Arlong decks. Just a great trigger blocker card that yellow can utilize really well. So I'd put high value on Brule. This pudding is a 2k counter. Since OP03 currently is the first set purple came out, there's not too many choices in 2k counters. So for now, she's high value because you just don't have any other choice to run 2k counters. But once OP04 comes out, this pudding is not run at all because there's I believe 2 other 2k counters coming out that are just way better than this pudding. So for now, high value. In the future, probably low value. Charlotte Mont d'Or. I see some yellow decks run it as an answer to Zoro, but I don't think he's a good card. So personally, I don't give him high value, but just know that some people do run him. 7 cost Linlin, probably one of the higher value cards in the deck. Big Mom runs her, Katakuri runs her, Arlong runs her, Black Yellow Mom runs her. Yeah, she's just a great card to drop on curve. If you're going first, you can play on your 7 Dawn turn, and you can even play on your 9 Dawn turn before you drop your 10 cost Big Mom. Just high value card there. Zeus, I don't believe the homies are a valid strategy in Big Mom, so no value in Zeus here. Baron Tamago is a vanilla. I do see people run vanilla Big Mom Pirates in their decks, but we also have what's his name? Friggin' Charlotte Opera, which is basically the same as a Tamago being run, so interchangeable there. Prometheus is another homie, but homies suck. Pecoms is a vanilla. I've seen some Katakuri decks run Pecoms. I wonder why though, because they have access to Opera and Baron Tamago, but they want to run the 1k power less one in a meta where there's a bunch of Whitebeard around. I'm not too sure why, but people run them for some reason. so I can't say no value, but personally I don't think he's any value to us. Soul Pocus, nobody runs. Power Mochi, nobody runs. And then the stage card, nobody runs. So we have the leader, Rush Katakuri, maybe Daifuku, Brule for sure, 2k counter pudding, 7 cost mom, maybe Baron Tamago. I'd say she's a good start. Now if you're playing yellow, she's one of the best value starter decks to pick up. A lot of her cards are run in a yellow deck anyway. Yeah, I'd have to put her in best value. Alright, let's look at starter deck 8. So I just did a starter deck 8 and starter deck 9 video the other day, but might as well put them in this video just for completion's sake. You don't have to watch 2 different videos. The leader himself, pretty dookie. His effect, even if you can manage to use it well, and it seems like the deck wants to promote you doing like board wipes to make your leader into a big attacker. But no matter how many Dawn you get attached to your leader when you attack, the max you can take from their life is 1 card, so I don't think there's too much value into like getting too many rested Dawn on your leader this way. So that's why I don't think he's that great. This Uta, nobody runs. Gaimon, nobody runs. This Kobe, people do run him. It's not as ubiquitous as Garp or Sakazuki, but in like removal heavy black decks I do see him get played, but he's not like a key card, I don't think. The Shanks is a tech choice in smoker decks and Z decks, I believe. He's not in every deck, it's just every now and then you'll find one. Because of that, I can't put too much value in him. I don't think he's reliable enough for me to put value in him. Hirahoshi, a blocker, nobody runs. This Vivi, nobody runs. Higuma Nuts, nobody runs. This Makino, nobody runs. This Vanilla Garp, nobody runs. This Luffy, nobody runs. Laboon, nobody runs. Mr. 2, nobody runs. Gum Gum Bell, nobody runs. Gum Gum Pistol, nobody runs. So yeah, you can kind of see where I'm going here. That this deck has to be in the expensive toilet paper tier. Let's look at starter deck 9, the Yamato deck. Better than Luffy at least. I see Yamato's pop up every now and then. Oh, why did the background reset? 1 second. Yeah, so as I was saying, I see Yamato's run every now and then. Compared to Linlin and Katakuri though, not as good. Yeah, her leader ability gives you a defensive edge when you're low on life, but the fact that Linlin and Katakuri can control their life makes it really hard for Yamato to do what yellow decks do best, which is control triggers. So really she's just tankier than the other two without knowing what's on top of her life most of the time. So I'd say low to decent value, not 0 like Luffy, but not a must-play leader like Charlotte Linlin. Uzuki Tempura, I don't believe anybody runs this card. Ulti, nobody runs. Kaido, nobody runs. This Odin, nobody runs. Momonosuke, nobody runs. Shinobu, nobody runs. Ushimaru, nobody runs. Omusubi, nobody runs. This Ace, nobody runs. This Luffy, nobody runs. This Yamato, if you need a 2k counter option in yellow, you could just run this. Interchangeable with the 2k counter pudding in the Big Mom starter deck. Except this one isn't searchable by any of the Big Mom Pirate searchers, so if you want to keep that in mind. This 2k counter can become an attacker for the price of 1 life, but that just doesn't seem worth it at all, really. Probably low value on this, but at least it's a 2k counter. This Yamato, probably the highest value card in the deck actually, even though it's just a vanilla. And that's only because OP03 doesn't have any other 5-cost vanillas in yellow. There will be one in OP04, which will make this Yamato like irrelevant, because this Yamato can't be searched by any yellow card. Yeah, so for now, you'll get to use this Yamato if you need a vanilla 5-cost in yellow, but once OP04 comes out, this card is 0 value. Narikabura Arrow is a niche defensive option. It's either this or Ikoku Sovereignty for yellow. It's usable, but it can be clunky if you're running a Big Mom deck, because once you heal out of 2 life with 10 cost Big Mom, this card becomes like a dead card in hand. But if you're at 2 life, you're probably safe enough to not need to use this counter in the first place. I don't know, it's like I said, clunky to use. And then Thunder Bagua, I don't believe any decks run this. So overall, the best card is the vanilla in the deck. So that kind of spells out pretty much where I'm going to put this, in the expensive toilet paper tier. And then if I had access to starter deck 10 in this tier list, I'd probably put them all up in best value, actually. I don't know if I can even count them as starter decks. They're like, it's a different product because they include 3 leaders and all the cards in the deck are actually like usable. So if I had to include starter deck 10, it would be here in best value. So yeah, that's my tier list. I hope it helps you determine what you should spend your money on if you're starting out with this card game. And if you're already a veteran player, I don't know if this list helped you much, but maybe you just like listening to the sound of my voice, in which case, thank you for watching. Let me know if you think differently on any of these placements. I'm open to changing my mind. Always open to discussion. Okay, bye.
Car D Kaizoku.